Hey folks, and welcome not to a battle report. At the moment I'm off with the old COVID, and I haven't had my club on this week, so it's like a 4 week gap, or 3 week gap in between clubs. So I've been looking at all my old collection of 40k stuff I've got, and I wouldn't mind bringing it back out. And just like 6th, I much prefer the older editions for gameplay reasons, and I'm trying to work out which one I really like. Now, games wise, I just about touched on the 2nd edition when that was in coming out, but 3rd was my first real setup for 40k. So my most experience is between 3rd, 4th, and 5th. 4th and 5th, I did tournaments and that in as well. So I was really popular with both of those. And after that, 6 came out, and I just started to lose interest in the 40k. It just seemed a lot to get hold of. It's not like I've got one army. I've got Eldar, Space Marines, Imperial Guard. I've got Orcs somewhere. I've got Tau, Necrons. I mean, you know, you can't just keep buying codexes. I kind of decided then. It just got a bit ridiculous. And as 6 came out, I think it was probably about the same time Failcast was out, and I just wasn't buying from GW at that point. It was just silly expensive, and my hobby wasn't going to go that way, and I got into a lot of other games. But looking back now, I'd like to get back into it. I mean, I've still followed 40k, seen the different editions. I've already on 9th now, isn't it? 6th and 7th kind of was a blur. None of those really grabbed me. 8th, I've seen some battle reports of it. It's a bit like between Warhammer Fantasy and Age of Sigmar. They're now two completely different games. Age of Sigmar still doesn't interest me. It's just not the right kind of skirmish game I have in mind when I want to do fantasy skirmishes. I think Saga have done it the best for skirmish games like that. And 40k, it feels pretty much exactly the same. You seem to be rolling for everything, and everything has dozens of wounds, and you've got dice everywhere. It's like, just not my cup of tea. So anyway, that to the back. I was then looking back to my old collections of games and deciding, what I really fancy playing. And 3rd edition was the obvious one. Just like 6, it was something new, something a bit more. Well, at the time, it was new to me. It was like a rehash of the actual rules themselves from 2nd edition, which were far more complicated. So I was thinking about the simplified version of it, and I've had a couple of games of it. And yes, it's a simplified version of it, but probably a bit too simplified. The rulebook is okay. I mean, I think that's what really sells me on a game is the rulebook. The fantasy rulebook, again, done at the same sort of time, but the fantasy rulebook had so much in it, and it was useful to have, and different ways of playing, and that's what really drew me to 6. I'm not saying ever said 6 has the best rules. Of all the rules, they're all, I mean, 7th, I think, probably covered up a lot of the 6 issues that they had, brought in a few more. But between 3rd and 4th, there was definitely a feel that they were trying to improve the game. 3rd edition had the trial assault rules, and tournament play was a really big thing. Not as probably as big as it became, but at the time it was a really big thing, and people played the game, and people saw how it was played, and Games Workshop, the developers, took notes from that and adapted things to it. And as much as I like 3rd edition, I mean, again, as I say, it's a bit like the 6th. It has a lot of stuff with it, a lot of campaigns, a lot of army lists, and makes it a very tempting one to go for. But then 4th came along, and 4th then adapted the rules, had, like an index, which was really good to have just an index, and had the universal special rules. And it was a really good book. It done exactly what I wanted from a book. It was colourful, it was bright, it taught you how to game, it taught you how to build terrain, it taught you all the different scenarios, different ways of playing. I mean, kill team. I don't know if it was a thing from the earlier eras. I've always thought of a kill team as like a Death Watch thing, but kill team came in, and in this version of it, you put together a unit of troops to basically do a Dirty Dozen style gameplay, and it was really good fun. You know, you didn't do it very often, but it was a nice thing to get out and try. And then for small games, you had Combat Patrol. You know, when you're just getting started as a way to get into it, there's a set of rules called Combat Patrol, which is basically just small rules. And as far as I'm aware, all these lists, these names now are still being used, but are a separate set of rules. I mean, all of these were in the one book. And then, as I say, the rule book covered everything else. And then we had Fifth, and Fifth again was a really good set. It did streamline a lot with special rules and everything, and different types of unit types. But it brought in a few things that I don't think I enjoyed as much. One of the big ones was true line of sight. So basically, you could see through area terrain. And for me, I preferred the abstract way of doing it. It meant that I didn't have to build all my area terrain solid. You know, if I wanted a woods that you couldn't see through, I literally had to build a woods that you couldn't see through. So if you see through the woods and see someone's foot, you could see them. While in Fourth, area terrain, you could either see 6 inches into or 6 inches out of, but you couldn't see through, and it had a size depending on your troops. So, you know, size 1 could be shot over by infantry, and that size 2 blocked infantry, size 3 blocked vehicles. And it was simple. It worked. I didn't have to worry about, could I get my head down, see through the building, see through that window to see that one bloke, and then fire everything on the unit. It just... And there were some other bits in Fifth. I think the army books seemed to be a problem with GW. From Fantasy, I mean, 6th and 7th, they improved a lot of the rules. They really did. But when it came to army books, they then just bloated them with special rules instead. And then again when it came to 8th, and every time you added rules, everything else needed to be added to as well. So you needed special rules to make other things more elite. And I think that was part of the problem for me with 5th. But as with most cases, you know, there's rules that I like from some and don't like from the others. 3rd edition was simple, but it made games very stationary. I'm pretty sure rapid fire units in that edition was you had to stand still to move twice. Once rapid fire was allowed to move and shoot twice, it suddenly made the game a bit more progressive and units started to move. In 5th edition, you had the run mechanic, which, you know, I wouldn't mind using in 4th edition. I don't think it broke it. It got troops moving. But then again, it also made transports really important. If you wanted to get to an objective, you want the fast units. You wanted your jump troops, transports, or bikes, or, you know, anything like that. Cavalry. I mean, it did make a difference on that case. So, you know, maybe I wouldn't put running. I don't know. We had fleet. There was enough troops that had fleet. But yeah, and in 4th they had the rapid disembarkation of troops. If a penetrating hits a transport, everyone got out, you know. And there was always a risk of becoming entangled, which was basically pinned with no leadership. That got annoying for some people. But previously in 3rd edition, the assault troops ran supreme in their vehicles, so it was almost a kind of way to kind of hold that back, and it kind of worked. As for army books in 4th, they weren't bad. I think they had a lot of flavour in a lot of them. I mean, the Space Marine one and the Imperial Guard one for sure had the abilities of taking combat doctrines in Imperial Guard, I think. So you could basically make an Imperial Guard unit from, if you know, your Mordean Iron Guard could be different from your Catachans to your Valons to your Voisterans, you know, whatever. Or completely make up your own, Tanith First and Only. There was a list of, you know, certain things you can take and different bonuses you could pay for. And that was really cool. Space Marines had a similar thing. Unfortunately, my Space Marines were salamanders, and theirs were a bit dull. But they're salamanders, they're supposed to be dull. So I thought that was quite cool. I quite like that. 5th, from memory, I say, it's been a fair old while. I'm pretty sure to get the kind of special abilities in your different troops, you had to take the special character of that army to effectively make that army, but I might well be wrong on that. And I think, oh yeah, and the end of 4th, I'm pretty sure the Elder came out as well. So we finally got rid of the 3rd edition Elder with the unkillable Wave Serpent. It was just glorious. If I ever killed the damn thing, I was well happy. That was my main goal in life, was to kill the bloody Wave Serpent or Falcon, because of how the rules overlapped. Yeah, they basically became. I think someone did the stats in it. It's a 1 in 80 chance of actually destroying the damn things. So, after looking back at them and having a read through them, I mean, I've still got all the 3 codexes. Rule books, and I think I'm probably going to go with 4th. I'm actually going to. I was really tempted with 3rd, as I say, just to bring it in line with 6th, but there was so much more of an improvement in the book in 4th that I think that is going to be the one I'm going to have a look at. And I'm as I say, it's my opinion. I'm sure everyone has a different opinion. Everyone believes the current rules are the best rules. That's fine. Everyone is totally entitled to have their own opinion. You're wrong, but there you go. But no, yeah, I think I'm going to have a look at 4th, and I'm actually going to do now. Just going to have a look through the book with you, just to show you a couple of pages from the 4th book and see what you think of it. But for me, going forward, I'm actually going to do some 4th edition battle reports, and there is now a group even on Facebook, which I'm definitely going to plug. It's Warhammer 40k 4th edition. It's nowhere near as big as the 3rd edition one. I've been in the 3rd edition one for ages, because I was really going to go that way, but after reading the codexes, I think I'm going to go for 4th. So if any of you enjoy 4th and you see this video and you think, I might give it a go, have a look on the Facebook group. I'll say it's Warhammer 40k 4th edition, and hopefully we'll start getting quite a good group together. The Warhammer 6th one is fantastic. Everyone on there is really supportive of each other, and I say there's just been a resurgence of tournaments in that for Warhammer 6th, which is brilliant. And as I say, I'll be going to one this July, so hopefully I'll be able to do some battle reports from that. So now we're just going to have a quick look and have a look into the book. I have to say the artwork in this book is really awesome. I think this is pretty much the edition where the Space Marines basically became the Holy Knight styles. A lot of religious iconography was placed on them, and of course their book became a lot bluer than the previous book, and the Ultramarines became the kind of poster boys for the Space Marine army. But yeah, the art in this is awesome, and part and parcel makes this book so awesome. And in this book we started to see the separation of the different types of units, so rules that will only affect certain types appeared. Your monsters, your vehicles, your bikes, infantry, jetpack infantry, beasts, cavalry, which is good. This is one thing that's missing in the 6th edition fantasy, which I like so much, is they started to classify things, so what affects what became a lot more obvious in 7th edition. But here, 40k learned and prioritised it all, and each had its rules that you could work from, which is great. Now for me, the line of sight area terrain, this is when it was most streamlined. I know a lot of people think the true line of sight makes it streamlined, but I think just a basic set of rules, understanding unit sizes, and that covers it all and makes life a lot easier. So as I said, you've got the unit size between 1 and 3. So infantry are 2, vehicles are 3. If you're shooting across, like a wall is 1, so a unit of 2 or more can see over it. And if your vehicle unit is more than 2 than the 1, it doesn't get the cover save. So you can quickly see it's simple. You just go into the battle, decide what its height is, if it's area terrain or not, and you can see into it or see out of it. Can't see through it. So you actually had woodlands, blocking line of sight, which is awesome for units like NIDS and that. Because a lot of the battlefields I've seen in games recently of the 8th, 9th edition 40k, it just seems to be a pretty bare bones table, and everything gets into combat, and that's about it. I could completely be wrong. I mean, it's been years since I played this, but I just felt that there was more options of gameplay in this edition, because you had obviously avenues of attack and that, which I don't know. I could be completely wrong. This is, for me, is the most streamlined, happy to use terrain rules that I can quite happily live with, and I think this is where they were best. The true line of sight thing just got irritating, because unless you blocked in all your windows and all your buildings, you're never going to hide everything as you wish to, and having your unit being shot at, through 2 entire buildings because I can see through it and see one of your guys, it got quite annoying. And yeah, this is the end of the combat phase. I'm talking about swooping advances. I know that was something that really annoyed people in the last edition, how easy it was to wipe out and move into another unit. What made a big difference here is, instead of being the 2d6 roll off, it was now a d6 plus your initiative. And you might not think that's an amazing difference, but actually I believe, all these troops have stats, and making the stats important, I think, makes them important in the game, and makes the troops more different, breaks them up a bit so they're not all the same copy and paste type in everything. And yeah, I like the sweeping advance. I'm pretty sure in this edition also, if you are fearless and you lose combat for each point, each unit, for each model that outnumbers you, so if you're outnumbered 2 to 1 or 3 to 1 or 4 to 1, you have to take extra armor saves. So even being fearless, you still be worn down, which again was a good set of rules. I just thought it would be important, because I know I was Space Marines, with Thou Shalt Know No Fear. I don't think they can get wiped out in the sweeping advance from memory. They just count, if they're caught, they count as being fearless and will just suffer the extra casualties. But yeah, as I say, I haven't read these rules in a long while, and I'm looking forward to getting back into them. I mean, here we can see the close combat rules. There's no separation. Power weapons are power weapons, doesn't matter if it's a power axe or whatever. So there's just a generic set of rules here. You could look them up, and you know what they did. You didn't need another book to find out what they're doing. Which again, I'm all for. The fewer exceptions you put into a codex, the better the rules are, because I don't need to have someone else's codex to understand how this works. Power weapon is a power weapon, whoever you are. Also in this edition, there's the vehicles had armor values. I know this is some love-hate with this one, but I think this actually works more for how vehicles should work than giving something 12 wounds. Because yes, I believe a missile launcher should be able to one-shot a tank. I heartily agree that it's so annoying when it happens, but there you go. Most of the game you're trying to get your cover save being obscured, and just removing it down to glancing hits, and smoke launchers were really important at the time. But of course, with that came the disembarkation table, which did get really annoying when your troopers that you'd set up ready to assault, because the problem is you couldn't assault out of a vehicle, so you had to move up, stay there for a turn, and hope your vehicle survives for you to get out and go for it. But what normally happens is you end up being destroyed, and then you're pinned for a turn, so it makes it even worse for them. But this did take back from the very aggressive Blood Angels and etc. for 3rd edition. So here we have the Universal Special Rules. This is brilliant. It just seems such a simple idea, but it didn't actually appear in 3rd edition. As with most cases, a lot of the special rules were in the books, and everything was just classified under one. So, horses would have Fleet of Hoof. Fleet would be the generic one, and that was brilliant. And then with the missions, I think it was like the 5 main missions. God, we played these to death over the years. You had a strategy rating which didn't come into it big time, only if you generally roll for it. But these weren't the only missions. There was a whole different type of missions, strategic missions like assault missions or raid missions. But these were like the basic way of playing. And you've also had 3 levels of it: Alpha, Gamma, and Omega, I believe. I can't quite see on my screen here. And basically, the top one, the thing that annoyed everyone, was the escalation, where only infantry is basically deployed. Everything else is put into reserve, and it's supposed to represent like a slow build-up of a battle, which was really good fun. But obviously, the Nids loved it. Most of their stuff was infantry. As long as they took some non-monster synapse, they were well happy with this. So one of the things that really brought this book together, I thought, was the different ways of playing the game. It had the campaigns in it, the smaller games like Combat Patrol, Kill Teams, and it actually discussed about different the community of the game as well. And the whole game system felt more of a community game than it did in the later editions, where it just felt like a set of rules. Combat Patrol was basically designed for small games. One thing I didn't actually go over is Force Organisation chart. That was in here. You had to have a HQ and 2 troops, and then you could pick from whatever from thereafter. In this one, I believe you just had to have 1 troop, and there's a limit on armour size and type of weapons, so no ordnance weapons could be in here, no model with 3 or more wounds. And not only that, in here, they actually went over collecting the armies and different paint schemes on the armies, and really what the hobby was about. And I think that's what makes me like this book so much. It felt like a hobbyist book. Necrons, it took a bit of everything, Tyranids and Space Marines. So you had a lot of variety in it to be able to look through and just see how they're painted. And they're not painted to excuse me. Not painted to like heavy metal standard. They're painted, you look at them and think, oh, I could do that. It is possible. And then they have like a section on terrain. They give you some basic shapes to make terrain out of. Just print it off and how to build them. Again, seems to be something that vanished in the later books, which is such a shame, because for people getting into the hobby, I think that's what made this book so good for the people themselves. As I said earlier, there's special missions. These are the one type of them. There's another type which are like stronghold missions. So there's a lot of different ways of playing the game, different scenarios, and set the games up differently. Also on top of that, there was rules of engagement, which is something I'm sure I'll touch on a bit later. Again, because of the missions that designed around having bunkers, they showed you how to make your own bunkers. I know today I think they probably sell that kind of terrain, so you wouldn't see it, which is a shame, because it takes away from the hobby, in my opinion. I think I'll actually try and print one of these off and make one. Though, this was made out of foam core, I think this one was. I might see if I can do a card version of it. But yeah, all the scenarios, special scenarios, they needed some sort of specialist terrain. Thus, they showed you how to do it. You also needed markers and bits like that. So they actually showed you how to make up hidden markers, or you can see here, even just convert a couple of models to look like sentries, because some of the scenarios had sentries in it. And I loved all this. For me, it really built up the world of the hobby itself, and you could really personalise everything you had in your hobby. And I don't know, for me, this is what is selling me definitely on the 4th edition more, because this was, to me, was the hobby edition, but I'm sure some will disagree. So another way of playing this game was something called kill teams. As I said before, you basically take a unit. The image they have there is Schaefer-Zad's chances, and they pretty much, when they were released in 3rd, they were kind of good fun. They were all named characters. They weren't a normal unit regularly, but you could actually use them in a special way to have them all as named characters, and they should be able to take on 1,000 points of an army. Hard going, but it was fun. And they expanded on that and created this kill teams, where you kind of put together your own ragtag of special forces or elite team of whatevers. And had to compete against your enemy, but it wasn't kill team versus kill team. It was kill team versus what they called brutes, and which was basically these guys marching around in little squads of 3, and you had to take them on. And what would do, the more things that you'd do, if you'd fire your gun, you'd get noise markers, and the more noise markers you can, the better control the other players had. And it made for a really fun little game. And it was all in this book. We have campaigns in this book. How to run campaigns. How to set up campaigns. That's why I think, as I keep saying, I think this is my favourite book, because it had everything people wanted to it. Even simple things like rolling on tables, so you just play from one table to another, just moving everything down. We used to actually play in our hall on multiple tables. I think we had like 6 tables set up, and used to fight from one table to the other and counter back again. And that was great fun, and we really enjoyed that. And I'd love to get back into trying something like that again, now that we are, 20 years older. Could we do it in a more controlled way, or shall we still give all the advantages to the Imperial Guard with their Earthshaker cannons with their 105-inch range, and I could actually hit other tables or whatever it was. But yeah, and the book shows you these armies, shows you how to do it, and I just think it's really good for people who had not experienced the book, because this is a big book. I mean, I'm not even showing you the background lore, which is also really good. The art and all of that is fantastic, but it shows people how different ways you can play. I say same for me for Warhammer 6th edition, when it brought in the rulebook had siege and skirmish and campaigns and experience. They are not the best rules. They're pretty basic, but here it shows how you can individualize your troopers on your vehicles to create the units that you have actually played with and created in the battle. And this is something I did. My Crimson Fists ended up with Nid parts on them, because they would fight Nids and do quite well against them sometimes, until the Trigon and stuff came out. Then it was a bit more interesting. But it even has a complete little node campaign, so something basic, simple map, and how different missions you play on different places. I don't think I ever did this one, because I think it's pretty much like an Armageddon setting, and we didn't have a lot of 40k Orky players at the time. And then to finish off, you have your basic, the 2-page reference sheet with most of the basic stuff you needed on it. And yeah, all in the one book. It's a big book. You can pick it up quite cheap now. Not many people are interested in 4th. It's kind of a shame. It's really an individual book in between, the 3rd and 5th. And because it was kind of like the in-between, it's often overlooked. Because 3rd has a lot of nostalgia value for a lot of people. A lot of people got into 3rd. I mean, 3rd ran for what, 6 or 8 years, was it? Well, later on, it came down to 4 years for most of these, and that's because they actually adapted on the changes. Excuse me a second. I do apologise, but I still have my tickly cough from the old COVID. But yeah, it's kind of mid one with 5th edition. I mean, that was really big in tournament and stuff. A lot of people like 5th edition. A lot of the army lists were big and very involved. It was kind of the one thing. I mean, both this and fantasy seem to suffer from the same thing. They worked on a set of rules, and they made them better as they pushed on. I mean, for Warhammer, the core rules hadn't changed massively. It was mostly how you build the armies and what was in the armies had changed. And between 6th and 7th improved it. Between 3rd, 4th and 5th, they improved parts of it as well. But then they brought out, the rule books, the codexes and the army books. And they kind of feel, to sell them, they're obviously having to put new rules in them, make them more interesting, add more units. And all it seemed to give was a lot of bloat and, I wouldn't say confusion, but everything just kind of blurred in. Rules were put in for rules' sakes, and I don't want to have a unit with a page of rules. I'm quite content with a stat line and an army special rule to give you some flavour. And I think around 4th, I was quite happy with how things were going. Nothing felt hugely overpowering. You obviously had Apocalypse, which was kind of how to play with your big toys, your titans and stuff. There was no way this was actually involved in a normal game. You were playing a special game. Let's face it, Warhammer 40k is a skirmish game, and it was designed as a skirmish game and plays like a skirmish game. It's, you know, okay, platoon level, but individual units on individual bases with individual attacks. You don't want to be playing massive games. And when we did a couple of Apocalypse games, but you know, you spent all day with 5-6 players shooting the shit out of each other with their big guns, and not much actually being, you know, getting anywhere. Yeah, your decanning can wipe out this unit, but you know, what has it actually gained us? We've taken 3 hours for that to occur. There's no importance of manoeuvring because your ranges and the size of the vehicles were so big. That kind of put to the side. I mean, I don't mind the Apocalypse being separate. I mean, if you fancy the big games, I mean, we did it just so we had the excuse to get out, you know, the Baneblade. One of our players had an Elder Reaver Titan, the early Forge World ones, and me, I had, you know, my vehicle design rules crap from 3rd edition, and that worked pretty well. But you could clearly see it wasn't designed with that in mind. You didn't want these really big games. And 4th edition, as is, I think, with the rulebooks, I can't think of any on the top of my head that were like really rough. While 5th edition, I know, was it the Grey Knights that came in? There were some lists that just got boring. I mean, yeah, you've got the super unit that can fly and charge and high strength, high toughness, and it wasn't fun to play against. I mean, the Nids had whatever, the Hive Tyrant with wings, but you tend to focus it down pretty quick. I mean, it was, yeah, you had to, or you just throw units at it and hope it goes away. But later on, all the army books and the lists had so many special rules, and each unit had its own special rules, and I just don't think it's needed. Age of Sigmar itself, I don't know how it is now, but in the early days, you had a page of rules for each unit. Why the hell do you need a page of rules for each unit? It's not that detailed of a game that you need a page of rules for each unit. It just makes it a slog, because not only do you have to know all your rules, but really your opponent needs to know your rules as well to make sure you're playing them right. Otherwise, what's the damn point? You're just rolling dice with whatever happens, you know. Oh yeah, this can do this can do this. Turns out it can't. Oh, what a waste. You know, it seems a bit daft to say it like that, but I like the kind of simplicity of the 6th edition and fantasy and the 4th edition 40k. I think that balance is enough for me. It's an old game. I can bring in different rules if I want to from later on. If I really feel the run is necessary to give more manoeuvrability into the game. But I don't know. I kind of like the idea that you've got to call upon your transports. And it's not quite like 5th, where the transports got really cheap and hard to kill. In 4th edition, at least, transports stayed roughly the same as 3rd edition on that one. So, I don't know. I hope you can have a look through. You can see my opinion on the situation and my thoughts on it. And you can make your own mind up. Just as a hobby piece, pick up this book. It's a bloody good book for 40k hobbyists. As I say, for people getting into it, the whole lore and everything that's in this book is fantastic. The art is fantastic. The how to paint, how to play, how to build terrain and that is fantastic. It's what you want as a rulebook to get into a hobby. And I really feel the later editions, it's kind of left us, which is kind of a shame. And it seems to be more about, I don't know, the big miniature, which, hey, each their own. It's a miniature company now, and that's how they want to run it. And this is why I've chosen 4th edition as to being the best 40k rules written. And I'm sure a lot of people can disagree with me. Anyway, thanks for listening, and I shall see you on the next one. Farewellis.